What's the fastest car in Gran Turismo 7? My aim with this series is to find out. I'll focus mainly on road cars, each will be tested unmodified on comfort soft tyres, and again once fully upgraded, and a third time if it has an engine swap. I'm no pro, but I can usually do a lap without yeeting myself into a wall, so hopefully I can do each car justice. All cars are tested on a PS5 controller because I'm cheap, and they're all being driven with no driver assist except for ABS, which is set to low. The test track is the Nurburgring Sprint Course because it has a good mix of corners as well as some longer straights. Let's see today's contender. The first road car to take on the sprint course is the Mazda Eunos Roadster. This classic has been the first car for many GT players in the earlier games, so I thought it would make a good first car for this series. Known as the MX-5 or Miata elsewhere, it was conceived as a spiritual successor to classic British sports cars like the MGB and Triumph Spitfire, which had gone out of production. One of the biggest inspirations for the styling was the original Lotus Elan. The MX-5 has gone on to become one of the best-selling sports cars of all time, behind longer-serving nameplates like the Corvette and Mustang. So, how does it drive? Yes. Everything happens in slow motion, especially when compared with the much faster cars featured in Gran Turismo 7 that people usually drive. It slides easily, but it's very easy to correct. The lack of a limited slip diff makes it a bit sloppy to drive, but other than that, there's not much to say about it. It eventually gets around the track in 1 minute 56.314. Once upgraded, the car transforms, both to look at and to drive. The livery I've created for this one is inspired by some of the racing modification options from Gran Turismo 1 and 2. This unique colour scheme stood out more than some of the simpler options, like red with a white stripe, so this is what I went with. When tuning it, you can turbocharge or supercharge it, which is an interesting choice, but the turbo option adds an extra 30 or so horsepower, so the supercharger unfortunately isn't really worth it, although it does make the car nicer to drive. If you would like a setup for the upgraded versions of this car, I'll leave them at the end of the video. With all the upgrades, the car now sounds very angry and it suits the car very nicely. Weighing only 800 kilos, the car can be a bit tail happy, but it's mostly easy to keep under control. With under 300 horsepower, it still gets a very good time of 1 minute 30.163, just beating the Ford Mark IV and the Peugeot 205 Group B. However, we're not done, because the MX-5 has an engine swap option. We can fit the 13B, a twin-turbo, twin-rotor Wankel engine displacing 1.3 litres but capable of massive power. The 13B was fitted to the Mazda FD generation RX-7. With a rotary engine, the obvious choice was to create a livery that would do it justice, so I've recreated the Mazda 787B's iconic Renown livery. With nearly 600 horsepower, this is not an easy car to drive, but very fun once you're used to it. I found this car was actually faster with some ballast weight over the rear to help with rear traction. With full weight reduction, the wheel spin can be hard to manage. I managed a time of 1 minute 26.315, narrowly beating the Corvette Group 3 race car. So, those lap times put the stock MX-5 in last, 11 seconds behind the Jaguar D-Type, while it's 26 seconds faster when tuned, just behind the Alfa Romeo 155. With the rotary engine, it gains 4 seconds more per lap, placing it ahead of all but the fastest race cars so far. Interestingly, the engine swap is faster than the stock car by literally half a minute. Next, I'll share my setups for the tuned car and the engine swapped car. Hope it helps. My setup for the upgraded MX-5 on the standard engine is fairly simple. The ride height is low enough to look good and keep the car from leaning too much, but not so low that the wheels will hit the arches. For the differential settings, keeping initial torque low helps the car feel more agile, while keeping the acceleration sensitivity between 15 and 20 seems to be the sweet spot for most cars, so the inside or outside wheels don't spin too much under throttle. One thing I highly recommend is fitting the increased body rigidity option, both for this and the engine swap. Without it, the car can feel a bit sloppy. This helps with a lot of older cars. The 13B swap has a similar setup, but the initial torque is set higher to try and calm the car's twitchiness a little, and the front downforce has been reduced for the same reason. The biggest difference is made by adding ballast weight to the rear. The more weight you add, the more stable the car will be, but you'll want to keep the weight distribution at 50-50, or the car will oversteer more on corner entry, like a mid-engined car. So, there we have it. Tune in next time where I'll be testing something that's not a small 2-seat roadster. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Ta-ra!